Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
Greetings from the German capital and a warm welcome to our highlights edition, which this time around includes the following top stories. On the case, London celebrates 120 years of super sleuth Sherlock Holmes. On the beat, Mirik Milan is an Amsterdam mayor, but only by night. And in focus, how the Leica camera revolutionized photography. Well, some of the most iconic photographs in the world have been taken with one. Famous photographers like Henri Cartier-Bresson, Robert Doisneau and Robert Capa swore by it, a Leica analog camera. It was 100 years ago that Oskar Barnack first had the idea to use standard 35mm cinema film horizontally in a compact camera body. And the device went on to revolutionize the art. Well, now over 500 landmark Leica shots are on display in Hamburg.
You can aim it and snap a photo and no one notices. You couldn't do that with a bigger camera, and that's why I grew to love it.
Mir sehr ins Herz gewachsen.
You could still use it in difficult lighting conditions, and you could capture movement.
Every photographer in Vietnam War, everyone had Leica. And our friend of mine, he used it. We all worked together with Leica camera.
There wasn't any question. It had to be a Leica.
Under the title, Eyes Wide Open, 100 Years of Leica Photography, Hamburg's Deichtorhallen is celebrating one of the most famous cameras in the world. 550 works show how Leica changed the look of photography. Curator Hans-Michael Kützle takes visitors on a trip through the history of photojournalism.
What fascinates me is the humanity of these photographs. The photographers who worked with these cameras wanted to take a moral position.
Oskar Barnack is the man behind the camera. The precision mechanic created the first small format camera. This was his first Leica model from 1914. And the first photos from the new camera. It was easy to use, light and fast, and inspired a photographic revolution.
You didn't go to an event and take a picture. Instead, you were ready if something happened. That means chance became a decisive factor in photography.
A small negative, but a big picture. The small form factor let photographers get closer to their subject than ever before. Leica spans the change from the black and white photos of the past to today's digital reflex revolution. Photojournalist Jose Hiribas is a fan of Leica's newest model that only shoots in black and white. But the retro chic comes with a hefty price tag, 7,000 euros without a lens, and there's a long waiting list. Hiribas has 6 historic Leicas. They're collector's items whose value keeps going up. The Chilean photographer has lived in Berlin for many years. He developed a passion for Leicas early on.
All photographers who made names for themselves and influenced photojournalism, like Cartier-Bresson and Robert Capa, all had Leicas. Even when you're still a little kid, you dream of having a legendary camera like this.
A lens from the 1930s that still fits on a modern digital camera. Technology that stands the test of time is one of Leica's guiding principles.
It's impressive. I like the continuity.
At the Leica store in Berlin, used cameras and lenses are just as big a draw as the new models. The shop serves customers from all around the world.
Our customers from Asia, Russia, and the Arab world view Leicas, especially the expensive ones and special models, as status symbols.
There are countless Leica forums online which have contributors the world over. Young photographers are also discovering the joy of shooting with older analog cameras. The exhibit in Hamburg shows what the little Leicas are really capable of. A century after it was first introduced, the Leica is more than just a camera. It's changed how we look at the world.
And speaking of that, thanks to drone camera technology, we can look at the world from some pretty amazing perspectives these days and get a bird's eye view of some of those hard-to-reach places that once upon a time were impossible to see. Except, of course, that Victor, our next protagonist, also enjoys that kind of view. And so we went to see the work of a natural drone.
A quick look behind, and off we go. Nosediving from the Eiffel Tower. Sea Eagle Victor takes off from 300 meters above ground. The mini camera on his back films a bird's eye view of Paris. After 1 minute and 37 seconds, the unusual camera drone lands again on the arm of animal trainer Jacques-Olivier Travers.
Bravo! Fantastique! Tous ces applaudissements, sous vos applaudissements!
This is where Victor lives. The animal park Les Aigles du Léman, near Lake Geneva. In total, 150 birds of prey have found a new home here. Like a number of birds at this wildlife park, Victor was born in a zoo. Travers discovered him in an enclosure in the Kazakh capital city of Astana and bought him for 6,000 euros.
He came to us at the age of 4, so that's 2 years now. He'd never left his cage, so I taught him how to fly. It's crazy to have such a bird born into captivity. He could jump from one spot to another, but to fly you need to use thermal lift, the wind, the breeze, and normally they'd learn that from their parents.
Several years ago, Travers had the idea for a project called ADL-TV. The small camera weighs just 60 grams and is attached to the bird via a kind of mini rucksack. Today, they're going to record footage near Lake Geneva.
Victor doesn't like it when you attach the camera to his back. It's a normal reaction because eagles don't like being restrained. Taking the camera off is easy. Putting it on isn't.
The sea eagle slips into his cage in the car quite happily. He's looking forward to the upcoming outing, the trainer tells us. They've reached their destination, a mountain on Lake Geneva, and Victor is released. The eagle takes his time, slowly descending through a woodland and over the roofs of the local village. The camera captures his flight perfectly. Then he returns. Victor knows that a piece of chicken is waiting for him below. In the last few meters, he starts calling loudly to the trainer.
They're wild animals. They don't love humans. But he trusts me. He knows the exercise and thinks to himself that if he performs well, he'll get a reward. That's why he comes back. But it doesn't work perfectly every time. Sometimes he stays away and flies about because, after all, he's still a wild animal.
Back at the animal park, Travers watches Victor's new film. The French falconer wants to use this kind of footage in his campaign for the protection of endangered birds. Travers and Victor have already cooperated on several films for ADL-TV. This footage was filmed by Victor on a flight through the Mont Blanc mountains, which took several hours. A cameraman also filmed the eagle from the ground. The sea eagle has also accompanied his trainer while skiing. Victor has never lost a camera, and only once was one slightly damaged. The animal trainer is always trying something new. Here he is paragliding, and Victor is along for the ride. In Travers's new documentary film, Freedom, the camera eagle himself is the main character. The film, which is being released in Paris in March 2015, tells the story of Victor's life. The main aim of all the ADL TV films is to explain how humans and animals should share their habitat in harmony and respect, just like Jacques and Victor.
Well, he's an archetype of crime fiction and one with over 120 years of work experience. Sherlock Holmes, the super sleuth, created by Scottish writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, attacked his first case back in 1887, and more than a century later, his profile is higher than ever. The Museum of London wanted to find out why.
His appearance is unmistakable, his mind razor sharp, and his character enigmatic.
Very mysterious person, also the great detective.
With his deerstalker hat and his big trench coat thing, yeah, his pipe. Just, yeah, fascinating guy.
I think he's not normal. A little bit strange.
But he's incredibly smart and articulate.
An odd bird and fascinating person, this Mr. Sherlock Holmes of 221B Baker Street in London. But what makes him so intriguing? A new exhibition at the Museum of London tries to uncover the fascination for this world-famous detective. Since it's London's first major exhibition on Holmes since 1951, the publicity has been overwhelming.
The interest in Sherlock Holmes at the moment seems to be of a phenomenal nature, and it's not just in the UK, it's globally.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's detective was not a phenomenon from the start. Sales of the first two novels, released in the late 1880s, were sluggish. But when London's Strand magazine began to serialise the stories, that changed. It may have had something to do with the illustrations, the first to show Holmes in a deerstalker hat and coat. These are never actually mentioned in the books. One of the first to see the show was well-known mystery writer Anthony Horowitz. He was keen to search the earliest manuscripts for overlooked clues. He discovered that Conan Doyle rarely pulled off the perfect crime story on the first try.
This is extraordinary. It's fantastic. This dates from 1886, and it's a piece of paper written in Doyle's own hand. And this is where Sherlock Holmes begins. It's the first page of A Study in Scarlet, or Tangled Skein as it was called at this time. And it's got two characters on here. One is called Sherrinford Holmes, and the other is Ormond Sacker. And of course, they later became Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And you just think to yourself, if he hadn't made those changes, would the books have succeeded so well?
Anthony Horowitz has a very special connection to the iconic detective. He's just completed his second Sherlock Holmes novel, Moriarty, with the blessings of Arthur Conan Doyle's heirs. Horowitz is fascinated with Holmes' character precisely because it's so complex.
He's a very difficult character. He's aloof, he's cold-blooded, he's disorganized, he's a drug addict. He's many things. He's not exactly a very warm human being. And the genius of Doyle was to put next to him in this little house in Baker Street the warmest, most affable, kindest, most generous, most agreeable Dr. Watson.
By the early 20th century, the world of Sherlock Holmes was already leaping off the page and into the first stage and screen adaptations.
Look, Watson, look. The Tower of London. Sergeant Bullfinch. Moriarty without his beard.
Through the decades, Sherlock Holmes has kept adapting to changing tastes and audiences. Hollywood turned the great investigative mind into a feisty know-it-all, while the BBC's latest series transported him into the London of the 21st century.
So Sherlock Holmes keeps evolving, keeps developing, keeps changing, keeps travelling to different parts of the world, keeps updating himself. And so in that sense, he really does seem to have become a global commodity and indeed an immortal figure.
It seems only someone who never existed can achieve this kind of immortality.
Well, there are a handful of European cities that offer top-quality nightlife. Berlin, Paris, Amsterdam, for instance. Now, top quality means high standards for things like clubs, music lineups, and also transport and infrastructure. But while all of this contributes to a city's cultural profile, many municipal governments are reluctant to pay much attention, which is why the role of a night mayor, like in Amsterdam, is perhaps a sign of the changing times.
It's 10 p.m. in Amsterdam. The city centre has been taken over by party animals. Thousands crowd into the restaurants, bars and clubs. The Dutch city is famous for its nightlife, or should we say notorious. Luckily, Mirek Milan is on hand, Amsterdam's official night mayor. For Milan, who was re-elected to the post in September, it's a dream job.
The reason why I wanted to be the night mayor is to work in the Amsterdam nightlife scene, but also to work together with the local politicians in making this a better city to live in and to, of course, also to party in.
His first appointment is the Amsterdam dance event. DJs have come here from all over the world to learn how to get their foot in the door of the Amsterdam nightlife scene. Milan goes from room to room, offering tips and tricks.
What's this track? Gypsy Lover?
Gypsy Lover was made for Ibiza.
The post of night mayor is a voluntary one. Mirek Milan invests 3 days a week. During the day, he sits at a desk. At night, he paints the town red. The Dutch capital boasts more than 1,500 bars, clubs and cafes. And it has a reputation for very liberal laws on drugs and prostitution. But it began cleaning up its act in the early 2000s. Club owners protested against the city's introduction of more stringent rulings, such as closing time. For their part, politicians had the feeling that Amsterdam's nightlife would be its undoing. The post of night mayor emerged in 2002 in order to serve as an intermediary between night and day, politics and partying. Enter Mirek Milan. He took up the job in 2012. Mirek Milan is perfect for the job in many ways. He organised his first parties at just 20 years of age. Now the 33-year-old has his own events agency. He knows just about everyone in the scene.
The reason why I call myself a rebel in a suit is because I come from the Amsterdam nightlife scene, but if you want to change something, you have to speak the same language. If I walk into City Hall wearing my cap back and pink glasses, I won't get anything done.
Once a week, Mirek Milan goes to City Hall to give his advice to the politicians, whether they want it or not.
And then we discuss how it goes in Amsterdam nightlife scene, but also youth culture, but everything which happens in nightlife. So this can also be maybe public transport, maybe issues about taxis and all the stuff happening in Amsterdam nightlife.
Milan wants to improve late-night transport to the clubs outside the centre of town, such as Tolhuistuin on the waterfront in the north of Amsterdam.
Hey, Martin. Hey. Alles wel?
And he works it like a true politician. In his first term, Milan secured a special licence for 10 clubs, allowing them to open and close when they choose. Tolhuistuin was among those which successfully applied. He sees it as the first step towards his goal of abolishing the curfew.
Between 4 and 6 o'clock, all the venues close. So the streets are flooded with maybe 10,000 people. And this, of course, causes a lot of noise for the people living there. But also sometimes it happens that violence in nightlife occurs because people are meeting up on the street.
Mirek Milan also wants to enable restaurants to stay open after midnight. At the moment, that's only possible for fast food outlets.
A nice noodle place, maybe a restaurant where you could sit down and eat something healthy. That would be great for Amsterdam.
It's been a long day's night for Mirek Milan. Now it's time to rest.
And finally, this past week, Berlin saw the premiere of Europe's most expensive revue theatre show. The Friedrichstadtpalast is famous for having the longest chorus line in the world. And after 95 years in the business, its shows today are opulent displays of design, dance, and creative imagination. Well, the Wyld, Out of This World, is their latest offering, set to run for 2 years. And our reporter was behind the scenes on Thursday night for the big premiere.
The day of the premiere. This may be Nina Makagonova's most important workday in the last 2 years. The dancers exchange gifts.
They're our lucky charms. They're how we wish each other luck. Mostly chocolate, a few stuffed animals. That's customary in theatre. Come along. I'm not really supposed to show this. This is where it all ends up, the lucky charms people give us.
Das sind unsere Toys von allen.
Meanwhile, things are bustling on the red carpet at the Friedrichstadtpalast Theatre. Nearly 2,000 invited guests are expected, including VIPs, like fashion designer Wolfgang Job. Ballet dancer Alexandra Georgieva gives her ensemble a pep talk for today's premiere. Then it's off to makeup. In a predetermined order, all the dancers are readied for their first appearances on stage. A copy of the famous bust of Nefertiti graces the foyer and gets spectators in the mood. Gradually, they start to filter into the auditorium. They're joined by creative director Manfred Thierry Mugler. In the wings, Makagonova prepares for her first appearance.
I'm trembling with excitement. It's all so new. It's the first time we've done this for an audience.
And it's showtime. The Wyld, Out of This World aims to express Berlin's urban attitude.
They like it.
Over 100 artists are performing, including Ukrainian acrobats from the troupe White Gothic. We hear the first reactions during the intermission.
It's clearly an homage to Berlin. I like that. It's such a fascinating potpourri. The costumes were sensational, and the makeup was great. Parts of it were truly inspiring. I thought I could do that too sometime. From a designer's perspective, it was lovely.
After intermission, things get serious for Nina Makagonova. Her Nefertiti solo is coming up. A loudspeaker announces 5 minutes until the start of Act 2. There's no time to lose. But Makagonova is having costume troubles.
Nina, we have to go.
Coming. I just have to sew my pointe shoe back together.
We're now under the stage. Makagonova is hoisted up in front of the audience as if she's the famous bust of Nefertiti. The original is part of the collection in Berlin's Neues Museum. But in this show, Nefertiti comes to life. She's the queen of Berlin nightlife. Between scenes, she undergoes quick costume changes. The Wyld concludes with Berlin being invaded by a pack of aliens. Makagonova is on stage for almost the entire second act and has to keep making quick costume changes. Some 2 hours after it all began, it's time for the big finale. The cast gets a standing ovation. Manfred Thierry Mugler also stops by to congratulate them.
She's an alien because she's out of this world. Nicht von dieser Welt, but definitely an amazing talented lady.
It's an unbelievable feeling. I'm so relieved. A huge weight has fallen from my shoulders. All the hard work was worth it.
But Nina Makagonova's work is just beginning. She'll be appearing in up to 8 performances at the Wyld every week.
And that's all for this edition. So until we meet again, from all of us here in Berlin, all the best and thanks for watching. Tschüss.